The big news from Subaru is the all-new 3-row Ascent. It's the biggest SUV from Subaru ever. There's room for 7 or 8 passengers, with a choice of second-row captain's chairs or bench seating. It'll tow up to 5,000 pounds, and it has all the interior space you need for all your gear. And it gets your whole crew to the game with the safety of a Subaru, including standard symmetrical all-wheel drive. The all-new 3-row Subaru Ascent. Love is now bigger than ever. Maximum towing capacity varies by trim level, and trailer brakes may be required. See your retailer for details. Listen up, people. We have a big favor to ask, and we promise it won't take up too much of your time. You know, our show is supported by some fantastic sponsors, right? Well, we'd love to hear your feedback. Head to podcastopinions.com and fill out a short, anonymous survey. That's it. We swear. Again, that's podcastopinions.com.
The Fantasy Focus Football Podcast is presented by ZipRecruiter. Hiring used to be hard. Multiple job sites, stacks of resumes, a confusing review process. But today, hiring can be easy with ZipRecruiter, the highest-rated hiring site in America. And now our listeners can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Put it on.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010.
Well, it's Monday for some people.
Daniel got a little nervous. Welcome into the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. Field Yates, Matthew Barris, Stephania Bell, recapping every week one game. But Daniel Dopp has a case of the Mondays, or he's a bit nervous because we have some very special guests here. 5 members of the 2016 Women's League are here in the flesh in Bristol, watching us in the podcast. I don't know why they would make the effort to come see us here in Bristol, but they've chosen to do exactly that, so welcome to all of them.
Yes, welcome to all of them. I think Daniel's blushing.
He's a little blushing.
You can see it.
Well, what is cool about this is, so, you know, we for years, you know, back when Nate and I used to do it, so for years we've always had a man's league, and you know, and for most of the time we've also had a women's league as well. And as far as I know,
when you say most of the time, you mean once I took over and progressively, you know, moved the podcast.
We had it before. I thought we had it. I'm pretty sure we had it before. Did we not?
Yeah, it was me.
It was one league, but we had men and women in the league. We had men and it was always a mixed league.
Fantasy. Yeah.
We always had, I think we had one league and we had men and women in the league for many years. But anyway, every league, whether it was a man's league or the women's league or whatever, every league, from what I understand, has continued to keep together even when it wasn't the quote year of the podcast. And so
very cool.
Here's a league of women, the women's league from 2016, and they've kept together, and I count 5 women from the 2016 women's league that are in the house.
This Field just said there
Field
were 5.
did just say 5 exactly.
I don't listen to Field during the show. I don't listen to Field.
Don't worry.
During the show. Anyway, so welcome, ladies. Great to have you all here. You'll get to see the brilliance that is Secret Squirrel in person.
Rewind. Fantasy news
from the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
We've got a ton of stuff to get to, recapping every single game, and there were, I think, 13 from over the weekend. So let's begin in Cleveland, where Keith was there, not Kill Keith. And here's the good news. The Browns, they did not lose. Now, notably, they also did not win, but that's sort of a footnote in my book.
Yeah. You're focusing on the negative.
Okay.
They did not lose.
I just want to know when the fridges open. The fridges didn't open for a tie, did they?
No, they have to win.
Oh.
I was going to say, I tweeted yesterday. The Cleveland must have gotten so buzzed last night.
So psyched.
Like, not drunk, just buzzed.
Right.
You know, like a couple sips of some natties. No Bud Lights yet. Those will be safe when they actually win. Let's get to the game on the field, because no Le'Veon Bell. No Le'Veon Bell. Lived off those for a long time. 4 years in college. No Le'Veon Bell, but James Conner was there, and he was a force, Matthew. 31 carries, 135 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think, factoring in the 5 catches as well, he exceeded even the most optimistic expectations for him.
He was hashtag good at football, is what he was. He was terrific, actually. And we've seen this before. Like, we've seen the running back that isn't Le'Veon Bell coming into the Steelers and doing well. Now, I think some of it was because of the weather, right? So we expected a heavy workload because of the rain and the wind in this game. But we also, candidly, he was what was working. Ben was awful in this game. And so credit to James Conner, who had a great preseason and continued it on. It was exciting to see. We know the offensive line was behind him as well in a big way here. look, as long as James Conner is the starting running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers field, he's a top 10 fantasy running back.
So that brings a dilemma because we do not know when Le'Veon Bell will return. And for now, there are people that are scrambling and saying, my running back depth stinks. Should I try to acquire James Conner? So let's talk about it, Matthew. The strategy involved. If you were rostering James Conner right now, are you merely standing pat until Le'Veon Bell returns, or are you saying, you know something? Maybe somebody's out there itching to trade me Kareem Hunt because he struggled in week 1, and I'm going to get myself a Kareem Hunt in exchange for James Conner.
I think Kareem Hunt's a little unrealistic, candidly, but I would say, like, could you get Alex Collins from a panicked from a panicked player who sits there and looks at that timeshare and doesn't look a little bit closely because I think that was more game flow dependent. I think you could, if I had James Conner on my roster and did not have Le'Veon Bell, I would try to do one of two things. I would contact who had Le'Veon Bell in my league, and I would say something to the effect of like, hey, what are you willing to give me for James Conner? Because you're sitting there with your number 1 pick, your first round pick, just sitting there, and it could be a long time. We don't know when he's coming back. Now, we should note this. Adam Schefter tweeted yesterday. You probably know the quote exactly.
Basically, he said there are people around the NFL that believe Le'Veon Bell will return before the end of this month and in September, in which there are just 3 more Sundays left before we turn the calendar to week 5 in October.
Listen, and so I don't know anything beyond what you just said. I will say that my guess is that Adam doesn't tweet that accidentally. And so my guess is that if I had to lean on something, my expectation would be is that he probably reports sooner rather than later. So what I would do if I had James Conner is I would say to the person who had Le'Veon Bell in my league, saying like, hey, what do you want for Le'Veon Bell? Let me try to acquire Le'Veon Bell for less than what it would have cost you on draft day, and then you literally have the number 1 running back in fantasy, or at least a top 3 guy. Or conversely, I think you could try to trade James Conner to the person that has Le'Veon Bell, and I would not accept less than a number 2 running back or a number 2 wide receiver.
Here's the other good news for this Pittsburgh offense, besides James Conner, is the passing game was not impacted by the weather yesterday. It wasn't as wet as we thought it was going to be in Cleveland, but it was still pretty wet. Antonio Brown, 9 for 93 and a touchdown. Juju with 5 for 119. Ben Roethlisberger, when he's playing on the road in terrible weather, it's not a good thing. He was intercepted 4 times yesterday. Just an abysmal performance from Ben. He gets the Chiefs next week, a much better matchup.
Let's 2 fumbles as well for Big Ben.
Let's go to Cleveland because, again, it was not a loss. It was a tie, which is kind of cool, I guess. But Tyrod Taylor did not play well by any stretch yesterday, except for the fact that he can run effectively with his legs. Tyrod Taylor, 15 for 39.
But that's what he is, by the way.
Well, let me just make my point.
Yes.
Tyrod Taylor did not play well at all yesterday. He cannot throw that effectively. And yet, with his legs, he's effective enough that he's going to be a fantasy-relevant quarterback for as long as he has this job. 23.6 fantasy points. No correlation whatsoever because I think there are probably going to be a lot of people calling into local radio in Cleveland today saying, put Baker in. Tyrod stunk yesterday.
Tyrod struggled with the game. And by the way, for those of you counting at home, I don't think that counts as an interruption for Field. I thought he was done. I thought he had made his point. I thought we were having a conversation there. I don't think that one counts as an interruption, candidly.
Don't worry, there'll be more.
The Women's League will rule on it.
All right,
back to Tyrod Taylor.
Fair enough. Back to Tyrod Taylor. Had him as a top 12 guy going into the week. We've talked about him in the preseason. That is what he is. His rushing always keeps his floor high. I don't think this was an accident. I do think better days are ahead for Tyrod as a passer. Again, bad weather and, getting more into the game flow. First game of the season. Yeah, but Tyrod's going to be a top 12 fantasy quarterback as long as he has this job. And I think he's going to have the job for quite some time because I think as long as they're competitive, and they certainly were yesterday, look, they didn't win that game, obviously.
Correct.
But
they didn't lose it either.
Well, correct. And I don't think that was on Tyrod. I mean, look,
there was some pretty.
Listen, 100%. He had Josh Gordon deep, and he could have. Josh Gordon had to step, and he underthrew it. It was a bad pick. There's no question. There were some mistakes there, but listen, block a guy. You had a chance to win with a field goal. Block a guy. Special teams field.
A lot of things went wrong for the Browns yesterday, but Stefania, one thing became clear: Carlos Hyde is a primary man in the backfield.
He is, and I was interested in how, like many of the backfields we were watching yesterday, how is the distribution going to shake out? And the thing that got my attention was the limitations for Duke Johnson. I just thought that for me, Duke Johnson really not playing a factor at all in the pass catching game hurt what he was able to do for you fantasy wise. And Carlos Hyde was the preferred running back.
He got Duke Johnson did get 6 targets. He played 38 snaps compared to 46 for Carlos Hyde. Nick Chubb just got 4. So I think better days are ahead for Duke Johnson. I certainly would agree that you sort of raise your eyebrows here a little bit, but better days are ahead, I believe, for the entire Browns offense. I want to see what it looks like.
But Jarvis Landry got 15 targets. Some of our concerns about volume for Jarvis Landry, they're like, there's no way it can maintain. It might even get better.
He got it.
In Cleveland. Let's stay in Ohio with the Cincinnati
I believe better days are ahead for Josh Gordon.
Agreed there. The Bengals got their first win of the season coming back from 23-10 down, and Joe Mixon looks like a star in this offense.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, hard to argue with that. I mean, certainly if there was any question, I think he answered that. He is the main guy. Giovanni Bernard barely touched the ball. So, Joe Mixon.
Big concerns about Joe Mixon for me coming in this year. There was only one of them. It was would the offensive line afford him the ability to get the space needed to run and be effective? Well, the stat numbers from yesterday, 17 for 95 on the ground with a touchdown, plus 5 catches for 54 yards. So, Matthew, he's got potential, top 15 upside if he keeps playing like this.
Well, he was drafted as a top 15 running back. I think he's got top 10. I think he's locked in as an RB1. We saw him being used in the passing game in the preseason. We discussed this in the preseason, and sure enough, that's what happens. He gets 5 catches, I should say, in this game on 7 targets, as you mentioned, 5 for 54. Now, it was against the Colts. They're on a short week this week. They play the Ravens on Thursday night. I'd like to see him do it against a team like the Ravens. But the fact of the matter is that what you want your RB1, and he was drafted as an RB2, but what you want is your elite running backs to do against bad teams is exactly what Joe Mixon did. So step 1, check, right?
Yep.
Got a ton of work, was effective with that work, used in both running and passing. So yeah, I mean, I think at the moment, Joe Mixon's an RB1, and there was a lot of questions coming into the season. Some people were like, I'm all in on Joe Mixon having a big bounce back year this year. And there were others that's like, I don't know, he's really inefficient last year. I'm not seeing it. I'm not a believer in this rebuilt Cincinnati Bengals line. For after the first week, those who believed in Joe Mixon are feeling pretty good. I tend to believe more in Joe Mixon than not.
Tyler Eifert was on a pitch count yesterday, Stefania.
He was.
By the Bengals admission, and he was on exactly that. This was not the Browns' pitch count of Josh Gordon.
No. They actually carried it out, and I thought that this is a good plan for him because he needs to be on the field to be effective. But 3 for 3, I mean, he's reliable. He's reliable for his quarterback when he's on the field. If he can stay healthy, hopefully better things to come.
Good news for John Ross. He caught a pass. It was the only pass that he caught all day, but it went for 3 yards and a touchdown. It was great to see Andrew Luck back on the field, Stefania, just because I think there are still going to be people that, until yesterday, are wondering, like, anything that caught your eye from a medical perspective that needs to be addressed with Andrew Luck.
Yeah, here's one. You need to learn how to slide feet first so you don't take these hits to the head. This was a concern for him. I don't know if you guys remember, but one of my concerns for Andrew Luck coming into a couple seasons ago before his missed season was if he would be able to stay healthy. He'd had a concussion the year prior, and there was a real issue. They were concerned about him taking too many hits when he carried the ball. They wanted him to either get out of bounds. They brought in, I think it was Joe Girard, teach him how to work with sliding on him, and it still hasn't taken over. That remains a liability for him. As far as the shoulder goes, happy with that. You're still not seeing a ton of the deep balls, but that's not necessarily what he needs to do. I think he's doing what they're comfortable with. He was back on the field. He was excited to be there. All the positive things for Andrew Luck. I think this helps shake the rust off.
Good to see that from Andrew Luck. And Matthew, also good to see that a second wide receiver may have emerged in Indianapolis because Ryan Grant had 8 catches for 59 yards. Andrew Luck threw it 53 times yesterday. And I joked before the podcast, he might not throw 53 times every game. You were like, well, he might, which is fair because they're going to struggle on defense and they're going to throw it a ton this year.
It's one of the reasons we talked about this a lot in the preseason. And you know me, I like Ryan Grant, former Redskin, completely got screwed over by the Ravens. Just an awful situation there, but has found a home in Indianapolis. And we talked about the fact that outside of T.Y. Hilton, there was a wide open role there with Dante Moncrief now in Jacksonville to be the number 2 pass catcher of the Indianapolis Colts. It is a team that is not going to be able to run the ball effectively. It is a team that is not going to be able to play defense effectively. So what does that mean? They're going to have to throw. I mean, this is a game that the Colts led for a good chunk of the day.
10, yeah, that's
right. Keep that in mind. They were up 23-10 at one point. They led for a good chunk, and he still had to throw 53 times. And ultimately, obviously, Cincinnati won this game. Honestly, I don't think this is an accident. 8 for 59 on the 9 targets. I think you will see that Ryan Grant, I assume, will be featured prominently in your waiver wire column coming out tomorrow on ESPN.
Yes, he will. Matthew Berry, the backfield, by the way, in Indianapolis will be mentioned on that waiver column too. Jordan Wilkins has 14 carries for 40 yards. Meanwhile, Nyheim Hines had 7 catches for 33 yards. Matthew, if you had to choose one of them.
And don't forget Marlon Mack's probably back next week. So it's just going to add another layer to the backfield.
I think it's going to be, I think I would want Mack or Hines just because I don't think any running back behind that line is going to be able to run effectively and consistently. So give me the guys that can catch passes. Give me the guys that they'll try to get out in space that have the ability to get big plays. That's Marlon Mack. That's Nyheim Hines.
Nyheim Hines, of course, out of NC State, a rookie this year. Pint size, but very effective in the passing game. Stephania's 49ers fell a little bit short against the Vikings. Difficult game in Minnesota. And
real quickly before we move off of this game, I would just like to say, don't worry about Eric Ebron. Jack Doyle's the guy you want. I know Ebron caught the touchdown or whatever. Jack Doyle had a tough fumble, but still 10 targets in this game. Jack Doyle, if there is somebody that is panicked about Jack Doyle, I would make a trade for him because obviously there's going to be a lot of tight end needs after this week.
The 49ers came a little bit short against the Minnesota Vikings, and let's begin on the injury front, Stefania. Let's get that out of the way. Marquise Goodwin left this game early, looked like a leg or a knee injury, couldn't quite tell.
He had a quad contusion, basically took a blow to the front of his thigh, so you worry about bleeding in the thigh. You saw him perhaps on the sideline riding the exercise bike. They were trying to see if they could loosen it back up. He came back into the game, but really didn't do much after that.
So he left the game. Dante Pettis actually filled in and had 2 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown, but really a difficult day at the office for this passing game. We look at the box score, Matthew. Jimmy Garoppolo, 15 of 33 with 3 picks, but it wasn't as bad as the numbers might indicate.
Yeah, I mean, George Kittle dropped what basically would have been an 80-yard touchdown, and then they had another long play that, Garoppolo just missed on that. Give credit to the Vikings defense.
Yeah,
I mean, the Vikings defense is good.
Football.
I don't think this is, and Alfred Morris also fumbled in the goal line. Had he been able to cash that in, look, and there was a goal line stand there. He got a couple of tries at it. This game could have easily, with a couple of plays here or there, looked very, very differently. I think if I'm a 49ers fan, I am encouraged after today. Look, you never like to lose. I mean, same as the Browns. You don't like to not get a win.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is I would feel good about being a fan of either one of those teams or having players on those teams for my fantasy teams because I think better days are ahead for both franchises.
Yeah, one of their lesser known receivers ran a wrong route. That was the pick 6. Garoppolo was visibly frustrated. You saw that come out. With all of those things in there, they still they lost by a relatively narrow margin, I think, compared to what people thought would happen. So the takeaways have to be positive for them. They are down the starting running back that they brought in the preseason. Their number 1 wide receiver was basically injured and essentially ineffective for the rest of the game. And
Pierre Garçon Xavier Rose took a lot of Pierre Garçon.
And they're playing the Minnesota Vikings on the road at the same time. So I think they can work with this and get better.
By the way, George Kittle, 5 catches for 90 yards, an athletic freak. A guy's going to be a big part of that offense. Left some fantasy points on the field yesterday. Like to see that.
He was my tight end 11 coming to the season. His ADP was tight end 19 for the longest time. Like we talked about him, Field. It is not a fluke. They like him quite a bit. The running back situation, snap count. Alfred Morris had 31, Matt Breida 28. When they were competitive, it was Morris, and he got the goal line work there. They used Breida towards the end when they were trailing here. I still prefer Morris over Breida despite the fumble, but I think that's going to be the situation, honestly, is what Breida's going to be the passing down back, and Morris is going to be the early down and goal line guy.
I have a feeling the Vikings could be one of those teams that go chalky for us week to week throughout the fantasy football season because they're really good at some notable spots. Kirk Cousins makes his Vikings debut, plays fine, 20.4 fantasy points, including 2 passing touchdowns. 1 to Stephon Diggs, who, like Adam Thielen, gets you north of 14 fantasy points. I think the only takeaway here from Minnesota, and it's not really something we didn't expect, but it's encouraging, was that Dalvin Cook was out there on 80% of the snaps.
Yeah, I actually didn't expect it because you haven't seen it. You rarely take a guy to that much volume. And maybe their plan all along was he looks really good, and if there's no complaints, we're just going to keep letting it roll. That's certainly something that you do when you have a guy coming back from injury. I essentially played, like you said, 80% of the snaps. I think that his rushing wasn't as effective as his pass catching. So if you really go back and look at the film, He's got some work to do there to be the runner that he was before, but his versatility, without question, a huge value for the team.
He might also shave with Dollar Shave Club, Matthew.
He might. I don't know this for a fact. I do not want to say Dalvin Cook does or does not endorse Dollar Shave Club. I will say they are friends to us here at the 06010, because no matter what you do in the bathroom to get ready, Field Yates, I assume it's nothing. By the way, I assume you just sort of wake up looking like that. Dollar Shave Club has everything you need to look, feel, and smell your best. They have amazing shower stuff, hair styling products. I wouldn't know about that. Toothbrushes and toothpaste, and of course, razors and shave supplies. Field, how did the amber and lavender body wash leave your skin feeling?
Amazing, Matthew. And
Okay.
looking better
I
than ever.
actually
Some
use
might
that
say.
too. I like the amber and lavender. Why do you only ask Field?
It was in my script to ask Field.
Say,
To be
products
honest,
are for the ladies too.
I'm Ron Burgundy over here. I read
I'm
what's
Ron
put in front of me.
Burgundy.
Anyway, let's see. It says, that's how I get ready, but you're not me. I don't know if that's for Field or for me. All I know is this. You might shave your whole body to get ready for a bike race. Dollar Shave Club's Executive Razor and Shave Butter can help with that. You might do your hair to get ready for your soccer match. Boogies by DSC can help you get your style right. The thing is, no matter what you do to get ready, Dollar Shave Club has everything you need. And right now, you can get ready with an amazing deal on any one of their starter sets. There's the Daily Essential Starter Set, because there is, as Field mentioned, the Amber Lavender Body Cleanser. But candidly, you can't go wrong with any of them. Head over to dollarshaveclub.com/FFF to pick up your own Dollar Shave Club starter set for just $5 after your starter set products ship at a regular price. And make sure you check out their new video as well. That's dollarshaveclub.com/FFF, dollarshaveclub.com/FFF.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy, focus.
Let's say here in New England, where the Texans came up short against the Patriots, 27-20 was the final score. It was the return of Deshaun Watson. Just from a health standpoint, Stefania, anything stand out to you for Deshaun? You were confident coming into this year would be 100%.
I was, and I watched that game closely because I wanted to see what happened when he would get tackled, taken down, and that certainly happened quite a bit. There was one play in particular where he got dragged down, sort of got his legs tangled up underneath him with other bodies falling on top of him. You love nothing more than a guy to bounce back up right after that, even if it affected the game, not in the way the Texans would have liked. You come away feeling very good about Deshaun Watson's health.
He shouldered a lot of the blame after this game because he was rusty. 17 for 34, 176 yards. Matthew, any concerns about Deshaun Watson after just one game?
No, I don't think he can have concerns after one game, especially on the road at Gillette against a Patriots team that's been prepping for him for quite some time. No, I think it's too early to panic on Deshaun Watson.
I'm with you there. DeAndre Hopkins had a pretty DeAndre Hopkins type day. 11 targets, 8 catches, 78 yards. And Lamar Miller, somewhat quietly, with 20 rushes for 98 yards. The stats tell you he's a lot better when Deshaun Watson's on the field. Now, the Patriots had a pretty comfortable lead, so some of this yardage came in the second half, but good to see Lamar Miller tote a heavy load without Will Fuller in the passing game. I think this team has a chance to get much healthier, obviously, and also better in future weeks.
Yeah, Bruce Ellington catches the touchdown here. Alfred Blue vultures the touchdown from Lamar Miller, but ultimately 21 touches. I mean, that is a workhorse back. We talked about this, how when when Deshaun Watson started, Lamar Miller averaged over 14 fantasy points a game. He ends up with 11.9 in this particular one, but obviously could have been much bigger had he not gotten vultured here. I think if you have Lamar Miller on your team, you're feeling pretty good this morning.
For the Patriots, Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski remain excellent at their jobs. But let's talk about the other players on this offense. Let's start right here. I'll own it. Geez, Chris Hogan really did not meet my expectations. One catch for 11 yards on Hogan's. I messed up on that one. He played 69 of the 75 snaps yesterday.
I don't think you're like why would there was no indication that would be the case. And I was curious because you know this team so well. Why the distribution ended up the way it did was very puzzling to me. We knew they had to plan for James White. We were hearing about that.
But it feels like a classic
diminution
case
of Chris Hogan
like
was
that's going to be the outlier game for Chris Hogan this season.
Yeah.
Would be my
Don't be
guess.
afraid.
Yeah.
I mean, I was all in on Chris Hogan as well. I'm still all in on Chris Hogan. It's a disappointing game here, but man, oh man, I would try to acquire Chris Hogan in a trade if there's somebody who has him on their roster that is upset or willing to trade at below market value. I still think he's a top 20 wide receiver this year. I'm not concerned about it at all.
And you may try to pick up Philip Dorsett as well, widely available on waivers. We talked about this. Somebody needed to catch passes for the Patriots, not named Chris Hogan or Rob Gronkowski. He goes for 7 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Some of the encouraging things are, well, the production. Second of all, there were a couple of plays that were like side adjustments or at the line of scrimmage decisions made by Tom Brady, which indicates he's got a rapport with Philip Dorsett and a trust. Very valuable for at least the next 3 weeks. Philip Dorsett.
That's the key point, the next 3 weeks. Let's see what happens once Edelman comes back. There's no question that Philip Dorsett needs to be rostered in a lot more leagues. Look, he's going to be on the field with Tom Brady quite a bit, and when that happens, positive things can happen. But, again, I still much prefer Chris Hogan among Patriots pass catchers than Philip Dorsett. But I agree with you. I thought that was a very nice performance there. The running backs were a little interesting here.
Very much so. Let's begin with an injury, Stefania. Jeremy Hill left this game after blocking a punt, actually. Also had 4 rushes plus a catch. It did not look good, though, for him with the knee injury.
It did not. Like you said, prior to his exit, 4 carries and the reception, but we evaluated in the medical tent. Things aren't looking positive for Jeremy Hill. I would say, look, they're getting Sony Michel. They're probably going to have him active in the next week or so.
Yep.
But if I had Jeremy Hill on my roster, I'd be looking for some insurance somewhere else.
All right. Well, the Patriots are probably going to rely heavily on Michel once he gets his sea legs. But in the meantime, James White and Rex Burkhead are the known quantities. James White had a receiving touchdown yesterday, 9 total touches, and also 9 total targets. Rex Burkhead, I thought, looked okay yesterday, Matthew. 18 rushes for 64 yards. I probably had higher hopes coming out of the gate.
I certainly did as well, but he touched the ball 19 times. You're telling me a guy is going to be on the field with Tom Brady in the Patriots. He's going to get 19 touches. He's going to lead the team in snaps. He had 37 snaps. White had 34. I'll take that because more often than not, that's going to work out. I agree with you. He looked a little sluggish to me. White looked a little bit more explosive. But again, the Texans have a good defense. So, again, it's all 1 week. I'm not worried about it.
And let's not forget that he did miss a couple of weeks with an issue in training camp. So he really only had like a week of practice under his belt. Maybe not quite 100% yet.
A reminder, by the way, that Thirsty Kyle throws up on the screen. Chris Hogan had 1 catch in week 1 last season.
And then was wide receiver 3 the next 4 weeks.
Correct. So, better days ahead for Hogan. This is what the Patriots do. They sort of spread the love around. It is one of the reasons why they are such a great team. It is one of the why they are frustrating for those of us who play fantasy football.
Interestingly, they play Jacksonville next.
Oh, that will be a fun game. Anyways, we'll dive into that as we get further into the week here. But yes, I'm not panicking yet on Rex Burkhead or Chris Hogan.
Introducing the all-new 2019 Acura RDX. It's everything we ever imagined and then some. Featuring a turbocharged 272 horsepower VTEC engine, available super handling all-wheel drive, and a quick-shifting 10-speed transmission, the RDX delivers a whole new level of precision-crafted performance. With available 16-speaker ELS Studio 3D Premium Audio, Apple CarPlay, our innovative True Touchpad interface with absolute positioning, and Acura Watch, advanced safety and driver assistant technology, the RDX keeps you connected and in control. Entirely reimagined from the ground up and inside out, the RDX is highlighted by sharp sculpted lines and a low wide stance that hints at the driving experience to be had behind the wheel. Equipped with a standard ultra-wide panoramic roof and available 16-way sport seats, the RDX is redefining the SUV. Visit Acura.com/RDX to learn more and build yours today. And this week, Alvin Kamara is everything we ever imagined, brought to you by Acura. Although, to be fair, Michael Thomas was also sweet. In this game in which the Saints were stunned by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Alvin Kamara, he was okay, I guess. He had 43.1 fantasy points. Matthew, so much for a regression for Alvin Kamara, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there were reports came out in the pregame that even with Mark Ingram suspended, that he would split carries. Like, look, he only got 8 rushes, but you weren't worried at all. The production was there. I mean, I think we're just dealing with Alvin Kamara, an elite talent. It was one of the things, like you and I did a thing on the Fantasy Football Now. We did a slump or jump, which was would somebody take people that were performed at a high level last year, would they slump or jump?
Right.
and Kamara was one of mine, and I said he would jump, despite the fact that there's a lot of talk about touchdown regression with him, and obviously he finished very high in the overall season rankings last year. So I said he would jump because I think he's just that good, that elite of a talent. He's a special weapon, and Sean Payton, who is one of the best play callers in the NFL, continues to find different ways to use him. And what was exciting for me, Field, is that one of my big themes throughout the preseason has always been, hey, there is positive touchdown regression coming for Drew Brees. There is no way that he only throws 23 touchdown passes this year again. Off to a good start.
Unbelievable start for Drew Brees, 439 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Mike Thomas, amazing as well. Let's get to the players that I think people are asking about more, which is the complementary pieces of this Saints offense. Ted, I forgot to put my right contact, which is my nearsighted one. Who's that?
Ted Ginn, I believe. I don't know. Check my contract. Where am I? What's my status? Should I say his actual name, or are we live?
I don't think that you should say his actual name. I think you should say his given name. His biblical name.
Theodore Ginn Jr., the son of the great Theodore Ginn Sr., who was an amazing high school football coach in the great state of Ohio. In any event, Glenville, right, Keith?
Yes, sir.
Glenville, Ohio.
How do you know that?
Because I have information that's completely useless stored up here, and a lot of the stuff that I actually want and need is eluding me.
We should do trivia. Will you be on my trivia team? I feel like you'd be great at bar night trivia.
I'm in. It's got to be sports related, though.
Hang on for 1 second. Do you actually have a trivia team? Because I could believe it that you do. I actually see you as a kind of guy that goes to bars on Wednesday nights to play trivia.
Yeah,
Are you that guy?
Maybe I do. I'm
making no judgment about it. I'm making no judgment about it. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I'm just asking if you actually have a trivia team.
Yeah. Are you upset because I haven't asked you to come out to it yet?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm upset about, is that I don't get to spend more time with you. After doing the podcast, we go to our TV show. And then, yes, that's what I was just thinking. Like, I wish I got to see Secret Scroll at night as well.
No, I understand that. I got you, buddy.
Right.
Ted Ginn Jr. had 5 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets. Such a good vertical threat. Also picked up a 2-point conversion. Matthew, a lot of talk about, Cam Meredith, who was a healthy scratch yesterday, maybe Traquan Smith. You think that Ted Ginn has a firm grasp on this number 2 job?
It certainly would appear that way. Look, he has a familiarity with Drew Brees. He had a nice year last year, I think underrated. Certainly from an NFL standpoint, they like him there. And yet, until Cam Meredith is more integrated, they're going to be throwing. Because what we saw their defense do yesterday, it ain't the Saints defense from last year. There's no question about it. I mean, Tampa Bay came in there and punched them right in the face. And so I think there's going to be some shootouts in the Superdome, which we were used to over the years. Certainly not last year. But for the most part, Ted Ginn Jr. Needs to be rostered in many leagues.
Stefania, how many classes?
I wonder, without knowing anything, I bet you Cam Meredith is rostered in more leagues than Ted Ginn Jr. at the moment.
I would guess. Neither one of them is eligible for the waiver wire column, but both are definitely, I think that's a good point, though. Stefania, how many classes at Harvard did you take with Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Well, he went to that's a little lesser. It's Princeton, Harvard.
He went to the safety school amongst the Ivy Leagues. That's right. Wow. So Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Come on,
I
got to stick up for me. Look, if you are in that group, you understand the Ivy rivalries, right?
I apologize to Harvard people. I don't know.
Come on.
I just want to say, I would just like to say that I would just like to tell to everyone that's a graduate of Harvard University, to Yale University, Brown, Penn.
It's good that you can name them all. You left out Dartmouth.
Dartmouth,
Brown. You say that?
Yeah,
Brown.
Cornell.
Cornell. Colgate.
Did you say Wesleyan?
Nice try.
I just want to say to all of them, I respect you. I think you're smart. I think you're talented. I think you're beautiful. Stefania does not. I just want you to know that. She looks down upon you. She spits upon you. If she saw you in the street, she would turn her nose at you. I just want you to understand that. Just so you know. One of us is a man of the people. One of us is a little snooty.
All right, so let's get back on track.
I'm not going to tell you which one's which.
Let's get back on track here because Ryan Fitzpatrick was perhaps the story of the day yesterday in the NFL. Completed 75% of his passes at 42.3 fantasy points. That's not the expectation in every week. But Matthew, I ask you this. 2 things. One, is Deshaun Jackson going to be is Ryan Fitzpatrick going to be a thing in fantasy each week this year? And second of all, could the Buccaneers offense be better with him involved as a quarterback?
Okay.
This is going to be a question everyone's asking.
Right. So here's my answer to the first thing is, no, I don't believe Ryan Fitzpatrick will be a thing in fantasy this year. He certainly could be. We saw it, with the Jets in 2015, he was QB 11 for the year.
Yep.
Fitzy was terrific that year. but he's done this over his career. Remember 2014, that Week 13 game against the Titans? 6 touchdowns.
Right, it happens.
The next week
happens.
The next right, Fitz happens 100%.
Like
the next week he threw 135 yards. He plays the Eagles next week. Now it's a home game, but still an Eagles defense that will have extra time to prepare, of course, because Philadelphia played on Thursday night, a defense that looked really good on Thursday. Let me see him do it against the Eagles. Look, we thought the Saints coming into the season were a good defense as well. So credit to Fitzpatrick, who played unbelievable and somehow didn't have a perfect quarterback rating. I don't understand that stat at all, because I don't know how you play better than Ryan Fitzpatrick did yesterday, but for some reason didn't get a perfect quarterback rating. But yeah, I'm not rushing out to get him on my roster because, by the way, I think there's a chance he doesn't keep the job once Jameis Winston comes back.
Right, of course. I think there's a very good chance he doesn't keep the job. Now, I feel less confident in that today than I did yesterday,
100%.
but it's still the centerpiece of their franchise. A lot of football left. Let's get to the wide receivers here. Mike Evans was crazy good, but Deshaun Jackson, 5 for 146 and 2 touchdowns, Stefania, before leaving the game.
Yeah, he did. And when he went down, if you saw, his arms were kind of caught underneath him. So when he hit the turf, it was all head to the ground, a violent hit, no ability to protect himself, a concussion issue, also a shoulder injury, seen icing his shoulder after the game. I just want to do a call out to the medical staff, because if you were watching, Deshaun Jackson was resisting being taken to the blue tent to be evaluated. And they took the helmet away. They brought him in there, and all the appropriate people got involved. And that's actually a really big deal, because people are quick to criticize when those things don't happen, but rarely does it get pointed out when people are having to corral a player and make it happen. So in the interest of his health, he was evaluated, and we'll see what his status is later in the week.
I always resist going into the blue tent. Do you think that's one of the issues with me, Stefania? Should I have gone into the blue tent? Do you think my life would have been better?
Anyway,
maybe I just haven't gotten the treatment I deserve, that I need.
We have a ton to get to here, and obviously with the Bucs, Deshaun Jackson, if he's healthy, would be a waiver wire out. He is available in a bunch of leagues still, but Chris Godwin, Matthew, if Deshaun Jackson misses time, or just in general, which one would you prefer to roster going forward? Because Godwin also found the end zone yesterday.
It's a great question. Honestly, I mean, Godwin made an unbelievable one-handed catch in traffic.
I can tell you who I'd pick, because it's easy choice for me.
I think for this, if Deshaun Jackson is healthy, you're not interested in Deshaun Jackson?
No, you're not interested in my opinion. Go ahead. Go.
So, you know what? Because this is an unwinnable situation here. I just want the 2016 Women's League to realize what just happened there. So I have a choice now, right? Field Yates asked me specifically a question. So I have a choice of either being polite and answering Field's question or blowing it off and letting Stefania speak. So now I'm rude because I'm not interested in Stefania's opinion, but I'm being rude to Field Yates. So it's an unwinnable situation here. Starfania, what is your opinion on this particular situation?
And for the record, the only reason you were stalling, and so I was trying to jump in and move it along. And my opinion is Chris Godwin all day, every day, because Deshaun Jackson he has a history of getting injured, banged up, especially in the last few seasons, that causes him to either be absent or less effective in the games that he returns following the injury. And Chris Godwin, to me, would be the one with more upside. That's who I would go.
Certainly want him in Dynasty. Having said that, if both are active, I think Deshaun Jackson, we saw what he can do. He is somebody that it can be a difference maker when healthy.
Can be, but it's inconsistent.
I understand.
Even when he's healthy.
I'm going to toe the line here and just say that I'm going to wait and see for a little bit more action from both of them, specifically next week against Philadelphia.
Switzerland.
Ronald Jones was inactive yesterday.
I will say that I don't think you can do that, because my guess is that you think both they won't be available in your league.
Well, so right now roster percentage for Godwin's 34%. I think Deshaun Jackson's at like 42%. So you might have the option to. I
think they'll both be over 50%.
There isn't a wrong answer if you choose between one or the other. Let's get to the Jaguars and the Giants, because I think the most notable fantasy football injury of the day was in that game. Stefania, Leonard Fournette left it early with a hamstring injury and did not return.
Right, and everybody knew. This was an injury. Everybody knew what it was. He's reaching for his hamstring as he's kind of limping off the field. If you saw, they were working him out on the sidelines. The rehab staff kind of holding at his hamstring, trying to stretch him out. I think there was some thought that he might be able to get back in, ultimately done for the day. I feel like this is one of those situations where the amount of work and sort of the casual nature there of Fournette coming back in the street clothes made me feel like this wasn't a super significant injury. But again, all teams err on the side of being conservative when it's early on, and it's a hamstring, so they don't want this to be the story of Leonard Fournette for all of the season. As far as whether he's available next week or not, I don't think we have that answer yet, but I don't think this is going to be a long-term absence.
Along those lines, I feel as though the number one waiver ad available this week is TJ Yeldon, because if it's 1 week or 2 weeks, who knows? Even if it's 0 weeks, if you look at the available players on the waiver wire right now, I think he has the best chance to be a guy that you can play in your starting lineup if he does get to start next week. 14 rushes, 51 yards, and a receiving touchdown as well, Matthew.
Yeah, that was... So while we don't know how long Fournette will be out, that's unclear. What is clear is that TJ Yeldon is his handcuff. There was some thought that, hey, maybe we might see some Corey Grant. Maybe this might be more of a running back by committee. No, they were committed to TJ Yeldon as the guy. As you mentioned, 17 total touches in this game. He gets 7 targets in the passing game. We've always known he's a good pass catcher. I would agree with you. If you're the lead running back in Jacksonville, with the volume that team generates behind that offensive line, good things can happen.
I don't think a lot of people are going to be rushing to the waiver wire to add a Jacksonville wide receiver. D.D. Westbrook had 5 catches on 6 targets, but I don't think anybody clearly separated themselves from that group. A Giants wide receiver separated himself yesterday.
But I do think that I think that D.D. Westbrook and Keelan Cole separated themselves from Dante Moncrief. Wouldn't you prefer those two to Dante Moncrief?
Yeah, which we had agreed going into the season as well. But in terms of one establishing himself as a top 30 or 35 play, we are not there yet. One player did establish himself yesterday was the Giants wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr., who showed no signs of rust in his return from that ankle injury.
We said yesterday the one thing we needed to see was him in traffic. Him and Jalen Ramsey, it was fun to watch. I felt like if there was any lingering question about whether he was still apprehensive or there was going to be any issue with him playing in a live game series, that was erased with yesterday's performance.
11 catches for 111 yards. Now, the Jaguars were basically content with not letting, death by paper cuts from Odell Beckham Jr. Nothing over the top, but still 11 for 111 is a very good line. And Saquon Barkley, it just took one run, Matthew, to remind us why he's such a special player.
Yeah, I mean, when Louis Riddick was talking about him in the preseason, was one of the things we talked about is just, Louis calls it sponsorship. And we call it the fact that, this is a guy that is going to get every opportunity to succeed. They need him to work. And it was looking tough for a while. But last year, I believe only 2 running backs had over 100 yards rushing against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so 18 for 106 and a touchdown. A lot of it came on one big play. But by the way, that's what he is. He is a big play guy. He is somebody that can be used more in the passing game. Honestly, 6 targets in the game, only 2 for 22. I thought he would have been more used in the passing game. Saquon Barkley is going to be just a fantasy rock star this year. There's no question about it.
You talk about coaches burning film the day after a bad game. The Bills must have been burning the film for what happened yesterday.
I was just going to say about Evan Ingram. Had a couple of big plays called back due to penalty.
Yes.
You might look at the box score if you didn't get a chance to really watch that game. I didn't love Evan Ingram coming into the year as where he was going with his ADP, but better days are ahead for Evan Ingram. I would not worry too much about this one particular game.
Basically a forget-it type of game for the Bills offense yesterday. LaShawn McCoy, the only player that we considered starting yesterday, he had 7 rushes for 22 yards and 1 catch for -1 yard. It was a 47-3 game, a disgusting effort. There was nothing of note there from the Bills in a positive manner. I have a hard time imagining anybody other than LaShawn McCoy is going to merit starting attention. Kelvin Benjamin, 1 catch on 7 targets. It was ugly from the Buffalo Bills, and now they might have a new quarterback, a rookie in Josh Allen, who they wanted to but they wanted to develop for quite some time.
Game next week is at home against the Chargers. Look.
Are they seriously looking at the tape to decide who's starting next week?
It's an organization that makes some questionable decisions.
Let's save them some time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough spot to be in. I will say this about Nathan Peterman. That's a really tough spot to be in. I mean, the Ravens are a really good defense. You're on the road. It's not like he has a ton of weapons around him.
But it was ugly.
True.
Ugly in every imaginable way. A little bit nicer for the Ravens.
I mean, listen, I don't think they had a first down in the first half. I mean,
Other than first halves, Nathan Peterman's fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
Anyway, so we'll see how they do next week, but I agree with you. And you have to keep trotting McCoy out there. His usage was based on like they got out of the game so quickly. They're just like, all right, it's a lost cause.
Last thing from the Bills, just to make a note of this. Yesterday, Adam Schefter reported he's unlikely to face charges stemming from that incident that took place this offseason. So I understand this is a fantasy football podcast and that is a much more grave, serious matter. But as it ties to his status and his availability for this year, it would appear that LaShawn McCoy is going to play as long as he is healthy this season. Going on to the Ravens, who are a little bit better offensively. It wasn't the prettiest day, but are you nervous, Matthew, if you saw Alex Collins with 7 rushes for 13 yards and just 1 touchdown?
No, I mean they got up so big, Field. You know, when this game was within 14 points, and it wasn't within 14 points very long. I mean, the Ravens just crushed him. But Collins got 15 of the 25 RB snaps. He got 4 out of the 5 touches. Again, when this game was within 14 touch, he's their lead guy. The fumble was bad. And by the way, that is a hallmark. That is the one negative of Alex Collins throughout his career, whether it was in college or earlier in his NFL career, was the fumbles. That's always been an issue for him. But I think he's the lead back, and I think this was one of those things where the game got out of hand, and it got out of hand quickly, so they wanted to get some run to Buck Allen and Kenneth Dixon.
For the Ravens elsewhere, John Brown, Matthew, had a strong preseason, and it showed up on Sunday with 3 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown. Is he the Ravens wide receiver? Because Willie Snead also found the end zone yesterday, 4 catches for 49 yards. If you had to choose one of them to roster going forward, which one might it be?
I think I'd prefer John Brown.
Okay.
But Willie Snead's going to be a thing. I mean, he's the number 3 wide receiver. He's going to play out of the slot, though, and we know Flacco does like to go to the slot. But John Brown has been a rave throughout training camp here. Mention him on Fantasy Football Now. I have a lot of John Brown on various teams of mine as well. There's a connection there between him and Flacco. John Brown's finally healthy, Stefania.
I know. I mean, this is what we've been wanting to see. We saw the flash of that when he made his debut, and then he's struggled ever since in Arizona. And now, we're seeing the healthy John Brown again.
Yeah,
a lot of potential.
I think among wide receivers, without looking at the, Field, you do the waiver wire column. I'll look forward to reading that tomorrow on ESPN.com. But my suspicion is that John Brown, who heading into whenever we talked about him on the show, he was at 80% availability.
Yeah, he's on the list.
Yeah.
Willie Snead is not, because I'm going with the higher upside player in an offense that I still think is not going to be as good as it was in the passing game yesterday.
Is there a wide receiver higher on your list than John Brown that you would want to roster from free agents? For me, he'd be like
Ryan Grant is up there, a little bit higher for me, and I'm going to probably take my pick between a Bucs wide receiver going forward.
Interesting. I think John Brown would be my number 1.
The Chiefs, and Stefania has a chance to get on her high horse right now. Tyreek Hill was one of 3 players with 42.3 fantasy points. Yesterday, he had a receiving touchdown, 2 of those actually, and he had a return touchdown. He was ridiculous. Like we said with Alvin Kamara, so much for regression, huh, Matthew?
I mean, he's just a special player. He's just a ridiculous player in Tyreek Hill. And look, I don't know that he's always going to be as efficient as he was. 7 for 169 on 8 targets, 2 touchdowns. He also returns a punt for a touchdown. I mean, this is what Tyreek Hill is. I mean, I had him as a top 10 wide receiver. This is why. I mean, he's a special player, and
he's got a.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You finish it up.
I was just going to say it's in a fantasy friendly offense, and man, oh man, is Patrick Mahomes going to be fun to watch this year. Listen, I think I might have been too low on Patrick Mahomes coming into the season.
Evidently. Stefania, what do you think about that performance yesterday?
I know he was in my
touchdowns.
He was in my top 10, and I know we had this conversation because they were facing the Chargers defense. I actually was considering moving him down if Joey Bosa played. When it turned out that Joey Bosa had aggravated his foot, I thought there's going to be something. And actually, a plug for NFL matchup with our friend Matt Bowen, because they talked about Andy Reid in first games that he plays when he has a long time to prepare, and how they were going to do some special things against the Chargers defense. And I watched that and I was like, I just felt more confident about Mahomes. Love what I saw. It was really, he and Tyreek Hill, that you talk about stacking. Yeah. I mean, that combo is going to be a menace to the rest of the league for the rest of the year.
Rolling with my homies, I would say this to you, Field. If you're sitting there, Patrick Mahomes, in terms of his ADP, was not drafted as a QB1. He was drafted outside the top 10. So if you're sitting there now and you were like, hey, whoa, I got Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. I got, I got Andrew Luck and Patrick Mahomes on my team. What are you doing?
Try to trade one.
Yeah, 100%.
Back or wide receiver.
Where do you rate Patrick Mahomes for the rest of the season?
I'd say probably still a top 14 quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's a top 10.
We're in the conversation. Tuva's here, not trying to undercut the performance. 2 of his touchdown passes yesterday where he handed the ball forward at the line of
they
scrimmage.
were little shovel passes, but that's part of Andy Reid's offense, honestly.
No, I'm with you.
And it's one of the reasons why
we got a few things to wrap here on the Chiefs. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's one of the reasons why Kareem Hunt did not have a big day.
16 for 49 for Kareem Hunt. The scary part was he had 0 catches on just 1 target. I think all of us agree that better days are ahead for Kareem Hunt. I think Andy Reid will probably feel the same way as well, even though they had a very successful offensive day. Sammy Watkins' debut, 3 catches, 21 yards on 5 targets, including a drop that I saw. I'm not sure that much better days are ahead for him, but I do believe that better days are ahead for Travis Kelce, who had just 1 catch on 6 targets for 6 yards.
They scored so quickly that there wasn't a real need to get into a rhythm with Hunt or Kelce. I agree with you. I think better days are ahead for both of them. If somebody out there is panicking your league, feel free to try to acquire low and be like, hey, it's all about Tyreek Hill. Like, these guys are afterthoughts in the Chiefs offense. It's clear Mahomes doesn't look for him. Like, you can try to use that logic.
Fib.
There's some dumb people out there, Stefania. Not everyone went to Princeton. You know what I mean?
For the Chargers, it was a massive day on offense in total. Phillip Rivers, 424 passing yards. Melvin Gordon had 100-plus receiving yards. Keenan Allen, 100-plus receiving yards. So, again, sort of chalk status for those guys. But Austin Eckler caught my eyes there, Matthew, yesterday. 10 touches. And when Stefania and I were at training camp, they made a point, Stefania, and saying they want to get him involved on offense.
Phillip Rivers specifically talked about Austin Eckler and said that he was very excited about what he would bring to the offense this year.
Austin Eckler needs to be rostered in 100% of leagues because Melvin Gordon is rostered in 100% of leagues. And he's clearly the handcuff to Melvin Gordon, even though they're obviously very different kinds of running backs. But, yeah, I mean, they wanted to limit Melvin Gordon. That was one of the things we heard coming into the season was that they wanted to limit Melvin Gordon's touches, somebody who's been just like one of the true workhorses of the NFL since he's come to the league. I mean, in terms of he's always top 5 in terms of total touches among running backs here. So Eckler getting about 10 touches in this game, that sounds about right. Now, some of it was comeback mode, but when you think about Chris Thompson, I think Chris Thompson's probably a good comp in terms of how they're used in the offense, in terms of the amount of snaps. You know what I mean? Like, Chris Thompson's going to get, 10 to 12 touches a game. And that's, I think, what Austin Eckler is going to get.
I got another guy for your waiver wire column, Field.
Mike Williams?
Big Mike Williams.
I considered him for my waiver wire column.
I mean, I saw where he, often going undrafted, I was getting him in very late rounds, but it was really nice to see him be utilized the way that he was. Wasn't sure Antonio Gates was present. I didn't know how much that was going to factor into it, but 5 catches, 81 yards. And a healthy Mike Williams could be a big deal for them.
The good thing for yesterday for fantasy was they had to throw the ball so much. I don't know that they'll have to do so much going forward. But Mike Williams, big and talented.
Antonio Gates does nothing in this game. I bring him up only because first game back, Chiefs are sort of, have traditionally been tough against the tight end. Better days are ahead for Antonio Gates, and I bring that up just because I know we've got some tight end injuries that we're going to get to. Antonio Gates, I think, would be on your waiver wire column after George Kittle in terms of tight ends that you need to pick up.
I got to check his roster percentage, but maybe.
How many people have Antonio Gates on the roster? I think it's certainly less than 50%.
Moving along to the Titans and the Dolphins. The craziest game of the day yesterday because it took like 6 hours to complete. It was crazy. The game started at 1. They had massive delays because of lightning on several different occasions yesterday. The Titans left this game not just in defeat, Stefania, but banged up. Delaney Walker did not look good.
Delaney Walker, I think, is likely done for the season. I mean, this was an ankle injury that kind of reminded me of what you saw a couple of times last year, and like Odell's ankle injury, Delaney Walker being carted off. Whenever you see them putting like a splint around him, you worry about if there's a concern for a broken bone. But I would say, and you just saw the immediate concern from his teammates. This guy's a veteran. He's a leader. He's one of the most durable and consistent players on the team. And they just extended him, if I'm not mistaken. So just really unfortunate all the way around. Yeah, top consistent performer at the tight end position in fantasy, but I think you should start making plans for another tight end.
And Marcus Mariota also got banged up, but did come back into the game.
He did, but he left right away, and here's why. Because the first 2 passes he threw were interceptions, and part of that was if you saw the hit, he had kind of a weird hit where his arm got banged, and if they were working on the sideline, you saw them looking at his elbow and then squeezing his hand. He said later that he couldn't feel his fingers in his hand and was losing grip control. That explains the interceptions, but it also gives you a hint where the problem was. The ulnar nerve on the inside of your elbow, when you hit your funny bone, Well, if you have a contusion to that nerve, you lose the ability to control part of your hand. It depends on how significant. Is it something that goes away within a few hours? Then he's back next week. If it's something that requires a few days and he's still having trouble gripping or squeezing the ball, then his status for next week could be in jeopardy.
The running backs were very interesting, Matthew, because we thought it might be the Derrick Henry show early because, well, it was a Derrick Henry show early. But Deion Lewis ended up dominating touches in this game. 21 for him, including 5 catches, and just 11 for Derrick Henry. Could this be a sign of things to come?
I guess my feeling is it was more game flow dependent than anything else. Like when they trailed by 7 or more, Deion Lewis outsnapped Derrick Henry 27-4. Better pass catcher. I also think a little bit of a hot hand thing here where, Henry was ineffective early and Lewis looked great coming right out of the gate. I think it's tough to read too much into this game because you're dealing with backup quarterback. They lose Delaney Walker. And oh, by the way, they're in this crazy rain delay, which just think about it, right? So you get into your uniform, you're going out there, you're stretching, you're doing your whole thing, you start playing in the game. Now there's a rain delay, and now you're just going into the locker room and sitting there. It's not like you can get out of your uniform. So you're sitting there in pads and cleats and everything like that for hours. You're sitting there. So I don't, maybe Derrick Henry couldn't get loose again. I don't know what's going on exactly there, but it was such a weird game. I think it's hard to take anything away from this other than the fact that this is a true running back by committee, which is exactly what we expected coming into the season.
Other thing I can take away from this game is that Kenny Stills remains underrated. 4 catches for 106 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of which was a 73-yard long shot to really break this game open in the fourth quarter at approximately 11:30 last night. But he was the only player that I think Miami showed yesterday, besides Kenyon Drake, that you feel confident potentially starting. Drake gets 17 touches, 8 more than Frank Gore. A little bit more of a backfield split than I expected coming out of the gates. But I'm encouraged by Kenny Stills. He's not qualified for the waiver wire. But I think Kenyon Drake, I also was slightly encouraged by. I thought it could be, I guess I had my reservations that it would be a true running back split. But I also thought it was possible that we might see 8 carries out of Kenyon Drake, and that would have really set the alarm up for me.
Yeah, so those are positives. Frank Gore was, again, really effective on less touches than Drake. Kalen Ballage, who I love, was a healthy scratch. Good call, Barry. We'll see. It's early. He's still a rookie. Ultimately, though, again, same thing that I said about the running backs in Tennessee. I think because of the weird nature of this game, I think it's hard to take any real definitive things away from it, other than the fact that, yes, I agree with you on Kenny Stills. Again, I think the thing I said on Fantasy Football Now was, and I've said on this podcast, was he was a top 30 wide receiver last year with Jarvis Landry there.
Yep.
And now, obviously, Jarvis Landry isn't. Kenny Stills is going to continue to be a thing as long as he is healthy here. And Frank Gore's not going away. Just like we say every year.
And that's smart. But it's not smart, Matthew?
What's not smart, Stefania? There's a lot of things that I know that aren't smart.
That's why I turned to you.
Right.
Not
I don't have enough time to really narrow it down.
Okay, well, let me help you out. What's not smart is making the lottery the centerpiece of your retirement plan. But what is smart is going to ZipRecruiter.com/06010 to hire the right person. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful matching technology scans thousands of resumes, identifies people with the right skills, education, and experience for your job. That's for your job, Matthew. And actively invites them to apply, so you get qualified candidates fast. That's why ZipRecruiter is rated #1 by employers in the U.S. This rating comes from hiring sites on Trustpilot with over 1,000 reviews. And right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. One more time, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And just a reminder, we'll be announcing the ZipRecruiter Smartest Fan of the Week on Wednesday. So there's still time for you to get your answer in. Just head over to ZipRecruiter.com/fan and answer the question for the ZipRecruiter Smartest Fan of the Week.
The question this week is, if you were stranded in a boat on an island with one member of the 06010, who would you choose and why? I'm just going to read one person really quickly. David Spiegel says, I would choose Matthew Berry because if a ship comes by and can only save one person, they'll look at him and quickly choose me.
Wow.
Okay. All right.
Pretty good answer right there.
That's
Pretty good answer.
We want more of those.
And actually correct. I think that's smart.
I know. So it is smart. That would be why it's in the running for smartest fan of the week.
By the way, David, that assumes, of course, that I haven't eaten you first, which I would have.
The Seahawks.
I would have grilled you up. Look, it's me or you, and it's going to be me. Just so you know, you're not. No one. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Make no mistake. I'm crafty. If I'm stuck on an island, I'm a survivor. Field.
Wordy. You're also wordy.
I'm also wordy. That's
the Seahawks
correct.
played the
That's
Broncos yesterday in the opener. It was in Denver, and let's begin with Seattle because there were a lot of question marks on this offense. Stefania, another one was created when Doug Baldwin left the game.
Right, and I think immediately people are like, oh, see, his knee, it's already a problem. Well, this was his other knee that he injured in the game. This was his right knee. Pete Carroll after the game saying he had an MCL sprain, medial collateral ligament on the inside of the knee, timetable unknown. So I think it's important to point out it's not the same knee that we're talking about from previously. You could color this as a plus or a minus. The plus is that knee is no worse. The minus is now we've got two knees for Doug Baldwin that have an injury concern. Depending on the severity of the injury will determine how long it is before we see him again. So stay tuned and see what comes up as the week progresses.
In the meantime, Tyler Lockett and Brandon Marshall found the end zone yesterday, as did Will Dissly. We'll get to him in a second. But Matthew,
by the way, I just want to go back. Doug Baldwin did come back into that game, but then when they saw he couldn't perform, he ultimately exited. Left. So sometimes we think that's a good sign. I wouldn't count on it.
If you had to pick a Seahawks pass catcher, Matthew, if Doug Baldwin is forced to miss time, who would it be? Understanding that Tyler Lockett's available in about 45% of leagues, and Marshall's available in about 90% of leagues.
You're going to think I'm crazy, but Brandon Marshall.
I don't think you're crazy.
You know, honestly, I mean, look, I know Lockett got paid. Lockett's the younger player. He's more exciting. There is an opportunity, especially in the red zone, for Brandon Marshall. Remember, Jimmy Graham caught 10 touchdowns last year, no longer on the team. I thought Marshall looked healthy, looked spry, looked young.
He looked good.
Looked like Field Yates out there. Honestly, very spry and young chickenish, and there's definitely a connection between Wilson and Marshall. So because I think Marshall's got the better chance at scoring, give me Brandon Marshall. It'll be interesting to see, like, does Jerron Brown get
I doubt it based on what we saw yesterday.
You know,
I have to
go ahead. What do you got?
Spring chicken. Chicken.
What about spring
Not
chicken?
Young chicken.
Huh?
Young. You called Field Yates a young chicken. I think what you meant was spring chicken. Field Yates should not be called a young chicken.
What? One name I want to put on your radar, speaking of young chickens or spring chickens, is David Moore, who is somebody that I know they like a lot in Seattle, and it'll be interesting to see. He didn't really do much yesterday, but I know they like him a lot there. He impressed in the preseason, and if this Baldwin injury is serious and is going to keep him out for a while, I bet you'll see more of David Moore. Again, for deeper leagues, this is not a 10-team league guy, but just a name to keep on your radar, or if you are in deeper leagues.
Let's keep
I know
moving
they
this
like
thing
him a lot
forward.
there.
Chris Carson was the far better running back yesterday on the field for the Seahawks. He had an incredible vault over a defender, 7 rushes for 51 yards. Rashad Penny, though, had 1 more total touch. The issue was that Penny's 7 carries went for 8 total yards. I believe for now that Chris Carson remains a Seahawks back that you want to roster and start going forward. Both need to be rostered in all leagues, but I think that Chris Carson will consistently rank ahead of Penny. I know Will Dissly had 105 yards and a touchdown yesterday. I'm not quite there on a rookie 4th-round pick as a must-add for your fantasy leagues.
Although you may be desperate. Again, I think it's going to be a very tight and needy week, and worth noting, Chris Carson had a 44-yard reception called back due to penalty. I think his box score looks a little bit better, obviously, if that doesn't happen. Penny was used in the passing game, though. It's, they literally basically split the touches right down the middle. I'm with you, though. I'm a Chris Carson believer.
For the Broncos, it was a prolific game for Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. Good to see, even though Case Keenum had 3 ugly interceptions yesterday, good to see what a more competent quarterback looks like and what it can mean for those 2 top-rated wideouts. But we told you there was going to be a Broncos running back that was a rookie that was going to catch your eye. We just didn't realize it would be Phillip Lindsay, the homegrown talent. He's from Denver. He went to Colorado. Undrafted rookie who was awesome yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
He really was, and I didn't see this coming at all. I knew they liked him, but I didn't think he would have nearly this kind of an impact. I was all in on Royce Freeman, and one of the reasons I was is because I was just like, you know what, Devontae Booker's just a guy, which, by the way, he is, but Phillip Lindsay isn't.
Yep.
Like, Phillip Lindsay's a nice little player. Now, keep in mind, Phillip Lindsay's 5'8", 190 pounds.
Sure.
Right? He's not... Royce Freeman's still going to be the lead back, He's still going to be the early down guy. He's still going to be the guy that gets the touchdowns. But they will use Lindsey in the passing game here. And by the way, he got 15 rushes in this game. I mean, like, they're going to use him. I think this is less fluke than more.
He's a waiver wire ad for me, a player that's had a lot of buzz throughout training camp. Matthews Redskins go on the road to Arizona and absolutely trounce the Cardinals. Ugly game for Arizona, but for the Redskins, it was very good. 2 running backs, 2 very impressive performances. Adrian Peterson, revenge game.
Fountain of youth, too.
Yeah, he looked great. I mean, he looked like a player that just was, he was motivated to prove a lot of people wrong yesterday.
This is a guy who had a disc issue in his neck last year that ended up costing him, forcing him out at the end of the season. Sure looked good.
It's that magical healing power of being in the Washington locker room is what it is. Drinking that sweet magic elixir. Honestly, look, he looked terrific. He looked every bit the part of, oh yeah, that's Adrian Peterson.
Right.
He ran with authority, with vision. He was angry. Look, not the most efficient day, but ultimately 26 for 96 and two receptions. He actually had a huge reception in this game as well. 28 touches. Some of that's game flow. Redskins got up big in this game and their defense played well, so they were up big, so they were grinding it out. Chris Thompson had a very efficient day, 11 touches. Again, I told you that's what he wants. They want to do like 10 to 12 touches. But that may be enough when you're as good as Chris Thompson. 5 for 65 rushing, 6 for 63 on 7 targets, and he scores a receiving touchdown here. It is going to be a little thunder and lightning here with the Redskins running backs this year.
I'll be honest with you. I think at some point this week or after next week, Adrian Peterson's a sell high because I think it's a good game script for him again against Indianapolis next week. But they got to be playing with a lead and him getting the opportunities in the red zone. And you might get somebody that's really panicked, and people do some goofy stuff at the beginning of a season.
I also think that Chris Thompson, what's important for him, this is a guy who thought he wasn't going to be fully healthy till November. I think was playing with some apprehension coming off that significant injury. This goes a long way to erasing that for him.
Didn't get much from the Redskins wide receivers yesterday. Jordan Reed didn't need to. They did not need to, but interesting to see. I still think that Jamison Crowder is the one that I'd be most confident in going forward.
I think he can feel free to drop Josh Dotson, as much as I hate to say it, in a 10-team league.
Not a great summer and just didn't really translate yesterday either.
No, it certainly didn't. Jordan Reed, however, Stefania, very healthy, 4 for 48, gets into the end zone.
Did you see a little video of him working out on the sidelines doing his routine? He said it takes him about a minute to do, and he was doing these funky movements on the side. He said it helps prepare him for movement. Always makes me happy when I see a player who's been injured who's taking steps to try and prevent that from happening.
Was it downward dog?
Take a look.
I know I did see it. It was sort of goofy looking, but fun, and whatever it is to keep him healthy. In a week where a lot of tight ends suffered injuries, Stefania, Jordan Reed comes out.
Let's make
scratch free.
Yeah, we'll see when the first injury report comes out.
For the Cardinals, it's going to be hard for me to imagine anybody utilizing any player not named David Johnson or Larry Fitzgerald in a lineup going forward.
I just want to mention Ricky Seals-Jones had 6 targets. So, after Fitz and DJ, he was the third most targeted player. Didn't really connect with Bradford. It was a tough game here. Redskins defense might be better than we think.
I agree. It's got a butt kicking front seven, and I'm really nervous about Arizona's offense. Very nervous about how bad the quarterback play was yesterday.
I would agree.
To me, if you saw David Johnson was not in the game consistently, don't know exactly what happened there. Didn't seem to be a reason. At first, you thought that maybe they were just yielding the game, but then he comes back in late. So I don't understand the utilization there. I hope there's some enlightenment about that later on.
So you may see Josh Rosen sooner rather than later. I just think, again, if you're looking at tight ends, I'm with you on Kittle. I'm with you on Gates. I do think if you're in a deeper league and those guys are gone in your league, Ricky Seals-Jones is somebody to consider. He's somebody that I believe has talent, and they're looking for options there in Arizona.
Ugly for the Cowboys on offense yesterday. Very ugly. I got to admit I am concerned because everybody knows I was optimistic that Dak Prescott could have an efficient year this year.
Yeah.
8.7 fantasy points yesterday, and I just got to be honest, the apparent lack of weapons is no longer apparent. It's obvious. Cole Beasley led all Cowboys wide receivers with 7 catches for 73 yards. That part is good. beyond that, is there a single pass catcher in this Dallas offense you would have any confidence in whatsoever? And maybe even including Cole Beasley.
No, I mean, I was anti-Dak. That was one player that you and I had way far apart. Look, and I got plenty wrong. Make no mistake. I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to, crow about everything I got right, because I certainly got plenty of stuff wrong yesterday. And through one game of the season, there's stuff wrong from the preseason as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I want no part of the Dallas. I'm in a loser pool, which is where you pick teams. It's a 10-team league, and you have to draft 3 teams. Yeah. Of which NFL team gets the most losses. Dallas is one of my teams.
Interesting. Well, the Cowboys really struggled mightily. The good news was that Zeke Elliott got 18 total touches, 17.6 fantasy points. I'm a little bit concerned about how bad that offensive line is and how it could potentially limit Zeke, like in terms of him being in the same tier as a Todd Gurley or a David Johnson or a Le'Veon Bell, when Le'Veon returns, of course. But the passing game is what is most disconcerting to me.
If you look at the numbers, and maybe Thursday Cal can pull this for tomorrow, if you look at the numbers of that line when Travis Frederick's in the lineup and when he's without, it's I suspect it's pretty stark. Travis Frederick's a big deal that him missing. I mean, him missing. He's out of that game, and we'll see when he returns. To me, that's a big deal on that line.
The Cam Newton-led Carolina Panthers weren't much better offensively. They did find the end zone twice, but of course they get 2 rushing touchdowns, and neither one of them comes from Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, I'm aware.
We know.
Oh, I'm aware.
McCaffrey had 16 total touches for 95 yards, 13.5 fantasy points, but Alex Arma, the former West Georgia defensive end, the 6th-round pick this year, gets a 1-yard rushing touchdown.
What are you doing to me, Norv? Like, seriously? Like, you couldn't, I mean, like, C.J. Anderson gets down at the 1, and you're like, oh, thank God. Oh, McCaffrey's in there. And then they're using McCaffrey as a decoy, and they hand it off to the fullback. I was very bitter. Where's the bitterberry? Do we still have the bitterberry? Where is the bitterberry?
Yes, it's right in front of you. It's next to the other.
There you go. Hand it to me, please. Thank you, Field Yates. Thank you very much.
And just chuck it somewhere.
There. Oh, my God, I'm so bitter about that.
You buy it.
It's very, very bitter. But I still feel better days are ahead here for Christian McCaffrey. Ultimately, at the end of the day, he got 16 touches, which was more than his target. If he had gotten that he fumbled, so that was -2. If he gets into the end zone as well, I mean, you're looking at, an 8-point swing, and suddenly, his 13.5 points looks a lot better when it would be over 20. Stefania, I do think if Greg Olsen's injury is serious, that would, you never love to see an injury, but certainly a lot of McCaffrey's damage last year was done with Olsen out of the lineup.
Well, you can expect that to potentially be the scenario again. Greg Olsen injures his foot, same foot he had surgery on last year, in a walking boot on crutches after the game. Sure looked like the same type of mechanism that would set you up for the exact same injury. I got to point out, when you've had this much downtime, he's been a full go essentially since last November, cleared for everything, all activity, work. When you've had that many months, the risk of re-injury for these published data, not just making this up, less than 5%. It is exceptionally rare. It is really frustrating. If that's the case for him, he's got to be extremely frustrated. This is just not something that we see guys who try to come back during the season have re-injury. That happened with Edelman, happened with Des Bryant. Greg Olsen tried to come back. It was still struggling because he was still healing. For it to happen a year later after a surgical repair with a screw, very, very unusual. And I'm sad beyond belief if that's ultimately the case for Greg Olsen, but it sure looked that way.
All right, we're going to
feel bad for him.
Very bad for him. Ian Thomas, the next man up, their rookie pick out of Indiana. Great athlete. Let's get to the final game of the night because our Twitter audience has a limited window. It was the Bears versus the God, Aaron Rodgers. The first half for the Chicago Bears was unbelievable. They had a massive lead going into the first half, and we were encouraged because Jordan Howard was really good last night in this Bears offense. 5 catches, which ties a career high, and Mitch Trubisky played really well in the first half as well. He finishes with 14 fantasy points. The first half and second half are 2 totally different stories. What was your most important takeaway from this Bears offense, Matthew?
From the Bears offense?
Yeah.
Was it Jordan Howard? I mean, I was wrong. Like, honestly, look, I had Jordan Howard on my hate list in the preseason, which came out like in the first week of August. And look, I backed off it a little bit because I said, you know what, they are using him somewhat on third down. But look, I just called that one wrong. Wrong, because I thought Jordan Howard looked great in this game. 20 touches, over 100 yards, ran with authority, 5 targets, 5 catches, Field. Like, the talk about that Jordan Howard was going to be more involved in the passing game, that he'd worked in the offseason, on his hands, and was going to become a better pass catcher, wasn't just talk. Yeah, I mean, so credit to Jordan Howard, credit to Matt Nagy and the coaching staff. I thought he looked great. That was my biggest takeaway. My second takeaway here was Trey Burton, who, I was super high on Trey Burton coming into the season. He was the guy that I'm all in on. I still believe better days are ahead for him, but 1 for 15 on 6 targets. They just couldn't connect. He was the second most targeted guy on the Bears, but they were, Trubisky spread it around a little bit.
Allen Robinson looked good in the first half last night. He had some contested catches, one down the field vertically. I'm encouraged overall by this Bears offense. I'm also encouraged by Aaron Rodgers, but it was scary for a second, Stefania. More than a second, actually. He left the game.
And if you, what's nice is when you get the video and it actually really clearly lays out what happened for the injury. So he had 290 pounds fall on top of him. His leg was in a weird position, so he was up in the air, and when the body weight fell on top of him, it pushed his knee to the inside. My immediate thought, I don't usually speculate on the air, but I'll tell you why I'm saying this now. My immediate thought was he probably sprained his MCL. When he went in and was carted to the room and he came back, they did a close-up on TV, you could see that he had a sleeve under his pants that had these struts in it. They put a strut on either side, so it controls medial lateral stability of the knee. That made me think this is probably an MCL sprain. It probably will be very hard for him to play on it. You saw him not really putting weight on it, not wanting to bend it. At one point, he went down to tie his shoe, stuck his leg out way behind him to keep it straight. All of those things support that. The fact he came back in and finished, and he said after the game, I'm definitely playing next week. I don't think he'll be himself. He played with a calf injury before and limped around, but I think he'll be out there.
Sometimes adrenaline can really carry a player.
Right. He'll feel worse today,
injury.
I guarantee you.
Going to be a sore Monday for Aaron Rodgers, that much is for sure. We're going to quickly say, Dan, we're saying goodbye to our Twitter audience right now?
No, we're not. We're going to keep on going.
Let's keep on going. Besides Aaron Rodgers. No, we're keeping on going. Besides Aaron Rodgers for this Packers passing game, Randall Cobb went crazy in the second half. 9 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown. A brilliant 75-yard go-ahead score. But it was the running back and the tight end that I wanted to get to. Matthew, what did you make about how the Ty Montgomery, Jamal Williams work share broke out last night?
It was such a weird game, honestly. I mean, look, if I have to pick one going forward, prefer Jamal Williams, but I don't think he did anything that was super impressive yesterday. I mean, they do like him in pass protection, and I think that would bode well given Rodgers is now going to be super gimpy and want to be very protective of that of that leg. I mean, it was a weird game because the Bears defense completely dominated the pack. It was a tale of two halves, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
The Bears offense could not do anything wrong. Trubisky looked great. They were moving down the field, and then the Packers offense couldn't get anything going. Khalil Mack and the Bears defense just looked unbelievable, dominating the line of scrimmage. And then all of a sudden, and then Rodgers goes out and DeShone Kizer throws the pick six, and you're like, oh well, wow. And then Rodgers triumphantly somehow miraculously comes back and leads them to victory, and the Bears were stymied and the Packers offense was running on all cylinders, but they were in a 2-minute offense basically for the entire second half, or since when Rodgers came back, they basically went, very hurry up once Rodgers came back, and very pass heavy obviously because they were significantly down. So I don't know that there's a ton that you can take away specifically from the run game here, other than the fact that my expectation would be you're going to want Jamal Williams, but you're probably not going to want to start him, especially next week against the Vikings.
Yeah, no, well, it's going to be a very difficult one. Maybe the best pickup of the waiver wire ad for these guys could be Aaron Jones, who's back after next week.
That's right.
Geronimo Allison also played well for them. 5 catches,
he was on our 3 list of 3 in the preseason.
That's
as somebody undrafted who could be worth a late round flyer.
A third wide receiver for an Aaron Rodgers offense is almost always a good thing. Last note here on the Packers is Jimmy Graham. 2 catches for 8 yards. We thought there could be, there was so much positive buzz,
I know it's only one game, but still, this was my concern.
But it caught my attention. I'll be the first to say there was so much positive buzz about him publicly from Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. I took the bait a little bit on Jimmy Graham.
He ran 38 routes. He saw just 4 targets. So again, that's targeting on 10.5% of routes. From Rodgers, 2015 to 2017, tight ends were targeted on 19% of routes run. I mean, so even less than a traditionally low usage of tight ends from Rodgers in the past. Look, I was very anti-Jimmy Graham in the preseason. You guys know, better days are ahead for him in this. I feel like yesterday's game was so weird, it's hard to take a lot away on what this Packers offense will look going forward based on last week's game. And especially, by the way, Because as we said, Aaron Rodgers ain't going to be Aaron Rodgers going forward. I mean, he's going to be gutty out there, but he's not going to be the same mobile quarterback. My guess is they will design an offense to take advantage of, very quick hits, not a lot of movement from him. He'll probably be almost entirely in the shotgun, so, it'll be interesting to see going forward. But if you invested in Jimmy Graham, I would be a little bit more patient, but to say that I'm surprised would be a lie.
Reminder, Stefania will be gathering injury intel on Tuesdays during the season, so Mike Clay will be filling in for us on Tuesday's show. Stefania is also on Instagram at StefaniaB87 and Twitter, Stefania_ESPN. He's Matthew Berry, TMR, everywhere on social media except for the Fantasy Life app. He's just Matthew Berry there. I'm at Field Yates. Talk to you on Tuesday.
Check out the Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus. Peace out.
Listen up, people. We have a big favor to ask, and we promise it won't take up too much of your time. Our show is supported by some fantastic sponsors, right? Well, we'd love to hear your feedback. Head to podcastopinions.com and fill out a short, anonymous survey. That's it. We swear. Again, that's podcastopinions.com.